Thanks for being here, Desiree.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to be with you, Teresa.
I'm excited too. I don't think I have spoken to someone who focuses on um, womenpreneurs yet on the program.
Yeah.
So that's exciting to me. And I was
Okay.
just wondering what sort of led you into that, focusing on women and their success and growth.
It's so interesting that you asked that. The first job I ever had is when I was 17 and I was working for an organization that needed teen mentors. And so I actually worked with young girls, and I had some boys at some point, but mostly young girls around self esteem, self image, and decision making. So my first job was teaching that to elementary and middle school students, which is like not normal, but it was such a great way to kind of put me on this trajectory for personal development and leadership. And I've always been so drawn to women and girls. So even right out of college, most of my work has been in nonprofit fields with women and girls. And I love it. I enjoy it. It gives me life.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And I know you have a book called Get Your Life Today.
Yeah.
And is that geared toward women or to everyone, or what's your book about?
So it is a book that I say is for women, just because I do attract a lot of women because of the work that I've done over the years. But certainly, I've had guys that buy it that get a lot out of it as well. But I know that it's a book that I wanted to create because I think about myself as a woman and always overthinking. And not that men don't deal with that, but I just feel like there's something about women where sometimes we, overthink ourselves or we don't want to say too much about ourselves. I don't know, it's a thing. And so, with that, I really wanted to encourage other women that are looking to expand their lives, looking to have a transition in their career into entrepreneurship, to give them, an opportunity to have space to really think about what they desire and help increase their confidence through taking action.
Oh, I think that's very needed. I think a lot of women, and really over the past two or three generations, I think we sort of
Mhm.
got thrown into for instance, the workforce with
Yeah,
no preparation, and we're always kind of,
none.
trying to figure out, how to sort of blend in, but also how to stand out and how to navigate
Hmm.
something that I don't think a lot of us were prepared for. And of
Yeah.
course, it's not typically something you learn in school, so that's really exciting. You had that opportunity. Um, but yeah, I do think, and I do think it is different for women, and nothing against men, but I think for women, not only do we overthink things, but we're typically juggling a lot more. And
Absolutely.
and again, without a map or without instructions of how do you be a great, mom, employee, boss,
Yeah.
whatever it is, all at the same time. So I think that's
Yeah.
really exciting.
It's interesting. I read this article recently through the Harvard Gazette, and it was talking about this new study that was saying women are least likely to self promote themselves than men, which leads to broad disparities in promotions and pay. And it just made me think about even now, right? Still, this kind of holding back that we do or not really celebrating our successes because, well, I don't want to over celebrate myself or over exaggerate what I did that was great. And so, even in my book and the work that I do with clients, it's always like, hey, you have done some really great things. We really need to expose that to others and just, get used to sharing it like it's normal.
Yeah, I agree, and that goes back to what I was talking about. Maybe the first generation or two that were where we were like a force in the workforce,
Mm-hmm.
we still had what we were taught at home,
Mm.
about being
Mm-hmm.
humble. And I know I was raised in
Mm-hmm.
Texas. It was like, don't get too big for your britches. And, so we had these,
Yeah.
and I confess, then we passed that along to our daughters. You know what I mean? Not on purpose, but we did.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I think it is still a problem because there's just such a long history of it, s-
Yeah.
even though we're not in that place anymore.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
definitely think the support is needed.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, one of the other areas that I notice is women frequently either don't have the confidence, and it doesn't correlate to what they've done, but they don't feel the confidence, or they
Mm-hmm.
don't know how to build their confidence. And so I was
Mm-hmm.
wondering if you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, what's interesting is that confidence is something just like resilience. It can be built over time, but it's built because of action, right? The more that we do, the more confident we become. I think about it like jump rope. You know, if you're playing with other people and they're turning the rope and you're trying to get your timing right so you can jump right in. And at some point, you got to jump in to, figure out if you really, have the rhythm together. And so I think that the more times we jump in, the more confident we get, right? And we get to do it more often, and it feels good to do it. And then before you know, we're not hesitating so much before we, jump into it. So I think the more that we can practice taking action quicker rather than later, and be okay with the consequences of failure or messing up, because someone told me a long time ago, failure is feedback, so it just helps you know what to do better the next time around. So I do encourage people to take action as soon as they have a thought about something that they want to do, given that it's not harmful to them, right? But making sure that they take an action on the things that are coming to mind. I think another thing that I like to, tell my clients to do, and I like to do for myself when I'm having those moments, is writing a list, right? A list of things. I call it the "you did that" or "she did that" or "I did that" list. And it can be anything that you feel like you did and you actually showed up for yourself, or you showed up for other people, or it was something that you kind of buried and never really celebrated yourself around it. And you can write it out and start really realizing how much confidence you, really do have because of the things you've already
Yeah, that's a really good point too, because
done.
we are quick to notice our flaws or what we haven't done or what we did wrong, whatever it
Yeah.
is, instead of focusing really on it's almost like we act like, well, if I did it right, that's expected. You know what I mean? Like that's
Right.
just normal. But if I did it wrong, and then we focus on that. So
So
I think the
true.
list is a good idea. Now, one of the things you talk about is building confidence by shifting our identity. What do you mean
Mhm.
by that?
Yeah, so there's this concept. So I also, I'm a coaching consultant for Franklin Covey. And so I'm really well versed in the 7 habits of highly effective people.
Love that.
So don't you, doesn't
Oh,
everyone?
we use it we use it in our coaching certification program, we use it
Yeah,
in workshops, yeah.
you must. It's such a great foundational piece, right? And so that whole really not beginning with the end in mind, but the first part is the paradigms, right? We talk about paradigms, and when we talk about see, do, get. And so we talk about this whole thought process of, the way that we think about ourselves, our paradigms, dictate our behavior, which also dictate our actions. And even, I'm sure you know about atomic habits with James Clear. So he talks
Absolutely.
about the very same type of thing. So it's not like it's, rocket science, right? A lot of people have realized that this is a thing. The way that we think will drive our behaviors, and the way that our behaviors are will drive our results or our outcomes. And so, I work with my clients, I work with myself. I talk about it in my book. Just how can we really focus on, if we're not getting the outcomes that we want and the results that we want, how can we focus on identifying as the person that does the things that we actually want to happen? That whole be, do, have kind of track, right? And so I think about it in terms of a lot of things that I've done, and I realized how much I really do use identity to help me move forward in a thing. And so, one example I talk about in my book is that I did a half marathon for the first time. I had never run a marathon or half marathon. I was a runner in my former life, more like 3 miles. Like I can do 3 miles, I'm good. But I never was someone that would say I would ever run 13.1 or even 5 or 10. I'm like, that's way too much. And so I was inspired to do it in 2019, in BC before COVID. I did it in 2019 in Philly. And I was inspired because I saw so many other people. I saw someone running a marathon, pushing someone in a wheelchair. And I'm like, what's my excuse? Like, there are so many amazing people doing amazing things. And so I decided to, do it. And what I had to do to prepare was, I'm like, okay, I've never done this before. Let me call some of my friends that actually do run and run longer races. I started researching what marathon runners wear, how they eat, what are all the apps you need to use to help you keep your progress going while you're training. And so I just really started adopting this marathon runner, mindset. And so it really helped me prepare, be successful at starting and completing it. And it really just allowed me to just see so many different ways that I could apply that to other areas of my life. So, identity, if we can really switch to the thing that we desire to become, so we can get the outcomes or the results that we want, we're more likely going to be that person that does it.
True, very true. And I
Mhm.
know now there are a lot of people, we're back in another crazy phase of the pandemic. Like
Right.
total chaos. I feel like it's total chaos again. It's like we're opening, we're closing, it's safe, it's not safe. But
Grand open, grand closing.
exactly. It's like, okay, just stop the madness. But I do feel like, I mean, clearly we're getting closer with the vaccines coming out. Like to
Hmm.
me, they're starting to be light at the end of the tunnel. I am not counting my chickens like on a date or anything like that. But
Same, same. But I
um,
agree. There feels like it's a little light. Carol Ann, where's the light? A little
yeah,
light, yeah.
exactly. I'm not going into it yet. I'm just gonna wait. Um, but I am thinking, and I know even for myself with a business and all the things that I do, I don't want to. I'm resisting the urge to start planning. I'm a planner, and I've
Mhm.
learned through this: quit planning. You can't plan. We don't know what's going to happen, so it's better
Right.
to. Obviously, we teach mindfulness, so it's better to focus on today and don't just
Yeah.
try not to worry too much right now. But now I know a lot of. If I'm feeling antsy, there must be a lot of people feeling antsy.
Oh my goodness.
And if you're, whether what regardless of the circumstances, we've got people that are home and out of work, and
Hmm.
once it opens, they may want to go back out and try to get a job like they had before, or we have people maybe that are thinking maybe they want to do something completely different. And I'm
Yeah.
sure there's fear and there's a lack of confidence and there's, just all these things going on. And so I was wondering if you could, and I know this is a big question, but I'm just wondering if you could just maybe one tip of, how to start if it, I don't want to say like we haven't been living, we've been living. But if everything's about
Right.
to change again, do you have any advice or a tip of maybe how to get started with what's next when it comes?
Yeah, no, that's a good question because I feel like we're all in this season of constantly having to kind of pivot. That's like the word of the whole pandemic, right? Pivot from the change. And so I guess not I guess what I have been doing for myself and with other people is like kind of gearing yourself up for possible change and giving yourself permission to have a different vision when change happens. And when I say different vision, it doesn't have to be a total different vision, but a different vision of what done looks like or what finished looks like. And so, an example would be, like for some people that are maybe restaurant owners or people that are in businesses and, maybe some restriction comes down. It's like, okay, we had a goal, we had a vision in mind. So we have to give ourselves permission to see what's another pathway for us to get to the same thing. So it's a lot of reframing, changing our course, that whole pivoting, but giving ourselves permission to do it because sometimes we can just get so, like in a hole about the way we wanted to see a thing. And so when disruption happens, we have to figure out how can we lean into the disruption by figuring out a way to move through it, so that it gives us the opportunity to get creative. Because I just feel like as humans, we are super creative. I always think about, back in college when you had like no money, and you had to figure it out, right? And I think everybody can think of a time when, they were down on their luck, even now, right? And they have managed to get through the year. They have managed to figure it out. And so I think that if we just give ourselves that space or that moment to breathe and, kind of like be okay with this is what it is, we can start thinking more creatively about, well, what's a new vision to help us get where we
Yeah, I like that. It's
want.
we've been talking about that for the past few weeks on and off on the podcast of,
Mhm.
this is an opportunity. It may feel like,
Mm.
oh, like I'm feeling that little like civilization's about to encroach on me again or something. But but at the same time, this we still have some time left, right, before we're all thrown
Yeah.
back in there full blast. And
Yeah.
and it's probably not going to look the same anyway, right? Whatever
Mhm.
we're going out into next. So
Right.
this is an opportunity to really take some time and think about what do you want your life to look like? And there
Yeah.
are steps you can take. You don't have to wait until everything's open or you know what I mean? You
Right.
can start doing things right now, which might include
Yeah.
reading your book, right? Start getting some ideas.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
Get Your Life. That sounds like a good title for right now. Get Your Life. You
Exactly.
just add a
All the
comma
way.
back. Yeah.
Back. I love it. I love it. Yeah.
So one of the things, because we focus a lot, and especially during the pandemic, but we focus a lot on managing stress.
Yeah.
And we always ask our guests, what their go-to is. So because we all have
Oh.
stresses sometime, even no matter how great
Mm.
we are at what we do, everybody experiences stress. So for you, when you have that moment where you feel stress coming on, or you're
Mhm.
about to do a big, maybe, I don't know now, online event, I don't, I don't, I'm
Yeah.
assuming you're not out too much in public. Um, but when it hits, do you have a practice that you use to either get grounded or calm
Mhm.
yourself or to get focused?
I do. It's so funny you asked that because what's interesting is that no matter, like you said, no matter who you are, you go through it. And I think I probably have ebbs and flows throughout the day. And so I have a couple of go tos. I am a tea drinker, and it's kind of like a way of soothing me a little bit. So regardless of the season, I'll take a moment. I'm like, let me, boil some water. Let me get some tea to help me kind of feel a little more soothed in a healthy way as much as possible without comfort food eating. So I try to do the tea. The other thing is I take walks. So especially because we are in the house in front of the computer more than we probably were before, I tend to anytime I get a break, I'm like I have to go outside. And so I take walks and I'll listen to podcasts or I'll listen to books or inspirational music. I might talk to a friend to just kind of like, or a family member to kind of just, take a moment and not think about anything work related. So that's usually really helpful. And I did it even during the winter time. I just bundled up and I was like, I'm going outside. I know it's freezing because this was a colder winter than before for a lot of people, right? So yeah, so I'm taking a walk. So between like warm drinks, that's my thing, like teas and such, and taking walks. The last thing I typically do is journal. So I do a lot of journaling. Sometimes I'll do it in the middle of the day. I did that today because I was feeling just a little overwhelmed, feeling like, oh, it's a lot of things going on. So before I started doing any work in the afternoon, I just took some time to journal. I have affirmations that I journal. I have a vision board that has my year affirmation on it, the words that I have chosen to focus on this year. And so I journal about that. I journal some prayers. I journal things that I want to see happening. So that usually gives me to a nice spot. And then I started doing work. So it felt good. So,
Those are 3 excellent practices. The walking, of course, we've been trying to get people just to get
mhm.
up because it is a problem now. So, including me. I mean, I'm not exempt from this sitting here for
Yeah.
hours, and it's like, no, just get up, and even if it's just around the block. So
Mhm.
that's excellent advice. And don't you think, or I mean, I think the tea drinking, because I do that. I drink tea. I don't
Okay.
drink it every day, but I tend to when I start feeling antsy or stressed
Mhm.
or even just a little bit discombobulated, like I'm not focusing. A part of it to me is the ritual because
Yeah.
you have to calm down for a minute, remember the steps, heat up the
Mhm.
water, pick the flame. Like there's something about just the ritual. Wait for the tea bag if you're using a tea bag,
Yes.
for it to see. So I've noticed that a lot with me. It's like maybe it's not just about the tea. It's
Mhm.
the process of making the tea, and tea is so associated with relaxation. So
It
I think it
is.
just sets your brain up. Oh, it's time to relax. So I
I
love the
love
advice.
that, Teresa. The ritual of it because sometimes I'll do the ones at home. So I have loose teas, I have bag teas. But if I'm feeling fancy, I'll go to the coffee shop that's open by my house. I'll jump in the car. I've timed it really well. So if I have a break, I'm like, I know I can do this in like 15 minutes or less. And I'll park and I'll walk and I'll order a chai latte, talk to the people in there, and then take a short walk back to my car and be back home. And I feel like I went on a whole outing.
Yeah, it's amazing, and it's sometimes it's hard to convince people, because I also encourage people to take more frequent breaks,
Mhm.
but shorter ones because we
Yeah.
go long stretches and then we're like drained or exhausted, or if we're stressed, we've built up so much stress, it's harder to
Mhm.
dissipate. But it makes such a difference just to get out of the environment you're in or to do something
Absolutely.
completely unrelated. And then, of
Mhm.
course, journaling is a very powerful practice that we actually do. Include in a lot of our teaching in the workshops because
Nice.
it's such a way to connect with yourself. And
Mhm.
for people that don't do it, maybe it sounds like strange, but you really do need to connect to yourself because I
Yeah.
think we get very sidetracked with other people's needs, desires, wants, expectations. And if you
Mhm.
don't kind of put a little break in there and go, let me write about how I'm feeling, And that's where
Yeah.
clarity comes from, or things come up where you're like, oh, that's why that upset me, or, whatever it is. So those are
Mm-hmm.
three great practices. You
Thanks.
must be
I
very
love
well
them.
balanced, Desiree.
I try to do the best I can.
And then we're coming to a close, but I just have to ask, since you mentioned that you're a great cookie baker. So what's your
Mhm.
favorite cookie?
Ah, favorite cookie to make? I have self-proclaimed it as the best cookie ever made. It's a chocolate chip walnut with oatmeal. So oatmeal chocolate chip with walnuts. That's my favorite to make and eat for the
Oh,
most part.
excellent. Oh, good. That sounds good. Now I'm going to get hungry.
Right, right, right. Do you have a favorite cookie?
You know what? I actually love coconut. So
Mm.
during the pandemic, I was like, okay, I don't want to eat too much junk or whatever, but could I find a recipe? And it's just a simple, it's almost like a sugar cookie with
Ooh.
a coconut in it, and
Mhm.
it's chewy and it's soft, and that did it. I only made
Yeah.
it one time. I just needed that little, I need something. So, yeah.
Good for you.
Now the chips and the salty stuff is a whole nother story. That one I'm battling all the time, but yeah,
Okay.
I don't eat sweets a lot, so that is one when I do, then it's really very rewarding because I don't feel guilty about it and I can really enjoy it. So
I love
I'll have to keep that
it.
in mind. Chocolate chip oatmeal. I haven't had one of those in a long time, so it's too bad we're too far
Yeah.
away, but
I
I'll keep that in mind.
know.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. Loved everything we talked about. I'm sure our listeners will get a lot out of that. Again, the name of your book is Get Your Life. And how,
Today.
and yes,
Yes,
and
get your life today. Yeah.
Get Your Life Today. Oh, I'm sorry, I left out the last
Yeah.
part. Get Your Life Today. And if people wanted to check out your work or
Mhm.
see what you're up to, I know that you do a lot of different things with dance and trainings and
Yeah.
Franklin Covey. Where's the best place for them to go?
Yeah, so the best place is my website, DesireeCocroft.com. And I'm on all social media platforms with that same name. So you don't have
Okay.
to like guess my alias. I'm on LinkedIn, IG, Facebook.
Great. We'll
Yeah,
post that too in social media so it's written out, and I'll repeat it again or maybe spell it at the end of today's podcast. So if
awesome.
you're interested, you'll have the information, and I really enjoyed our conversation.
Me too. This is so great, Teresa.
Thank you so much and stay well. We're almost there.
Almost, almost you too.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.